Hello and welcome, my name is András, and in today's video I'm going to talk about how we created our game Waste Waster for the GMTK Game Jam 2020, only in a 48 hours period. For this jam, our team consisted of 5 people. 3 of us were programmer colleagues in my day job, while the team also involved the artist and the narrative designer I'm working with on my new game. I've been playing the Unity for a few months by now, but the others haven't used it earlier, so they literally had to learn how the engine works over the weekend. They all did a solid job on this project regardless, so I'm really happy I was able to work with them. We were super excited to finally see the announcement of the theme for this year's jam.
This year, for 2020, the theme is out of control. As ever, how you interpret that is entirely up to you.
Right after the theme has been announced, we all took 20 minutes brainstorming each on our own and wrote down several ideas we wanted to discuss. We then jammed on a voice chat on Discord, and by taking turns, each of us presented their ideas to the others. We considered several different mechanics, from a zombie shooter, a stock trading simulator, a platformer with ever-changing controls, a game where only limited amount of control button presses were available, and a few more. After some discussion and explaining the basics behind each idea, we selected the zombie shooter as the one we wanted to move forward with. We then fleshed out the mechanics in a basic design doc. We wanted to do a full top-down action game with a twist. The player will not have direct control over their character, as he will move and shoot as he wishes. Instead, they can only drop power-ups on the level to aid the character to survive for a longer period. After we worked out some of the details of the core mechanics and then identified the areas we will be working on, we split up the different modules code-wise so we can start working parallel. While we started coding, we continued discussing the setting of the game. As the team announcement was at a quite late point on Friday night for us, we soon decided to go to bed and continue working in the morning. The next morning we decided on the setting. We moved away from the original zombie theme and choose to put the game in a modern era, where people are bulk buying stuff, especially food, which they aren't able to fully consume, and then it goes to waste. These wasted snacks are now coming back to take revenge. Now we had the team out of control, not only in our core gameplay mechanic, but in our setting too, which is always nice. Now that we had this figured out, it was time to start working on the art too. In the meantime, we already had some pretty good progress code-wise. We set up an empty stage where the player's character, which is the white dot, were moving to a randomly selected position, and the enemies, which are the red dots, were simply following him. We split up the level to several zones and kept track of where the player is, so he will never spawn an enemy where he is currently located, making the game a bit more predictable and easier to play. We added the basic code for the items. They are now randomly placed on the map, but the character still doesn't react to them. Basics for the UI has been created. The character now shoots the enemies, although he still one-shot them. The character can also be killed when the enemies do enough damage to him. We also add the scaling difficulty, so the newly spawned monsters become faster, have more health, and do more damage as time progresses. The character can now pick up items, although they still don't have any effect. We added health bars and some sounds. UI has been switched to the right side of the screen, and some scaling has been fixed. Item spawning now also following the same principles as other enemies. They can be spawned in the same zone where the player is currently present. The first art for the enemies is ready. Also, some of the items are now implemented, so they actually change how the game is played over time. They can restore health, boost damage or weapon range, as well as character speed. I haven't used the Unity particle system earlier, so I had to look up how it works. Once I got the basic feeling of it, I started adding it to various places to create more dynamics in the scene. UA timers were also implemented in the meantime, so now we can track when an item will expire or how long the character has survived. We also added support for restart after the character dies. Up until this point, we haven't decided on the method the player can spawn items in the level. We considered 2 options. The first one was that the player could drag and drop the item from the UI to the level, and once it's dropped, it will be randomized to a certain extent. The other approach we considered was doing the game keyword only, dividing the level to a set number of zones, and then the player only needed to assign the current item to a zone, and it will spawn in a random position inside the selected zone. Now after some playtesting we figured that watching the UI for the current and the next items takes away too much attention from all the action in the scene, so we implemented the item preview, which basically selects random position in one of the available zones and shows the current item there with a timer. This made it very easy to see all the action, positions of the character along with the enemies and the current item all at the same time, and checking the UI was only necessary to see what items are coming next to be able to plan ahead. We liked this idea the most, so we decided to stick to it. We added some more particles, more sounds, and a cute tombstone icon to the enemies, as well as implemented a knockback effect when the monsters are shot. This gave not only good visual feedback to each gunshot, but also made it more likely for the character to be able to survive longer. Earlier while brainstorming, we had an idea that the monsters should be able to merge with each other and become bigger and stronger, so we gave this one a go and implemented it to see how it would work. At certain points, two enemies decide that they wanted to merge with each other, so they would ignore the player for a while. After merging is done, their speed would be reduced, but would have more health and higher damage. After a merge is done, there is a certain amount of time they aren't allowed to merge again, but if they are left unchecked for too long, they would continue merging and eventually become an unkillable boss enemy. We also added some sounds and particles to item pickups, but at this point we felt it was time to go to sleep again. The next morning we got the art for the level. We also improved the movement of the character to better avoid enemies. We made some balance changes to the item timers, so now they would change and spawn more often, enabling a greater level of strategic play. We also got the UI menu system working with different windows, at the help and plow screen when pressing escape. We got plenty of mess on the level of the original artwork, but we decided to keep the area nice and clean at the start of the game and only make the extra layers of waste visible as the time progresses, to add an extra layer of tension and increase the feeling of being out of control. We got the character art in the game. We also added an immunity effect on the character after it was hit by a monster, so he can survive longer, and the badly timed movement in the middle of the monster forest wouldn't end the game immediately. We finally added some music. We also improved the character animation, so that now he rotates in the direction of the monsters he is shooting at. We also added some particles to the shooting. We improved the sequence of the items so that they are no longer random, but instead they are selected from a pool to make sure there's always one of each item in the queue. We made a change to the merging of the enemies as well, so that while they are doing their thing, they no longer damage the character. This gave an extra layer of strategy, as killing merging monsters were now much easier, while sneaking past them could have also moved the character in a much better position. We also added high score saving to the game over screen. At this point of the time we had most of the mechanics ready and we started to play just heavily. We made several balance changes to power-ups, added immunity to the character after it picks up a health kit, improved the rotation of the character so that it smoothly turns instead of changing directions instantly, and also added support for multiple screen resolutions. While Unity does a lot of things to make the game playable on every aspect ratio, since we had a fixed level we needed to keep in view at all times, some extra work was necessary. Needless to say, the game is designed to be played on a 16:9 aspect, but shouldn't be unplayable on other aspects. Only 1 hour before the submission deadline, we got the final item icons and backgrounds. We needed some changes in the UI and added some more polishing to the character rotation, but this was basically it. We uploaded the final game 30 minutes before the deadline. We are quite happy with the results, as we were able to achieve most of the things we planned, so it seems we were able to find the scope of the game nicely. Some ideas like multiple weapons, as well as a cover system are the most notable ones that we missed out, but overall we managed to get everything done. I hope you liked this video, and if you want to try out the game, check out the link in the description. Leaving a rating until the 9th of July would also help us to reach a better position in the jam.